I think the story of Robin Hood provides a good introduction for understanding the rise of political freedom in Europe and the foundation that will be laid for things like modern style democracy. So, looking at the story of Robin Hood, you're probably familiar with it, but if you're not, Robin Hood, and he's depicted here from the Disney version, which I believe was made in the 70s, and best version, I think. But Robin Hood was a good person, a noble, who is forced to be an outlaw. Why? Well, while his true king, the good king of England, King Richard, is off to fight in a crusade. Notice there's a monk there, Friar Tuck. King John, his younger brother, is going to take over and is going to do a terrible job of ruling the country and is going to become a tyrant, and Robin Hood will become an outlaw in order to fight against him. He does this for the benefit of the people. So it's kind of an interesting story because behind it you have this idea that you can have authority be illegitimate and that it's okay to fight against illegitimate authority. Now, I want to point out other civilizations have stories like this too. This isn't unique to Europe. But you do see here this idea that, yes, you can have bad authority and it's okay for people to fight against it. What makes Europe a little bit more unique, though, and why we're talking about this story, is if we look at the true story behind King John, right? The true story behind King John. So King John did not do a very good job as king. That's why he's just King John instead of King John the first or second. He did such a rotten job, no one wanted to name their kid after him. So he basically did a bad job, and I won't go into details about how he did a bad job, except to say he wasted a lot of money on diplomatic and foreign adventures, particularly wars, and really didn't accomplish anything, right? So he spent huge amounts of money without really doing anything, without having anything to show for it. And what he did then was he violated the rights of the barons, high nobles in England, to try and get more. So, for example, he would try and find some excuse or even make up a crime and falsely accuse the baron of having committed it, and then throw the baron in prison and keep the baron in prison for months, even years, without necessarily even charging that person with a crime until that person paid a bribe. And then he would use false accusations to seize the land of barons and all sorts of things like that. But basically, he's acting like a tyrant. He's not giving people due process of law. And like I said, he's kind of abusing things, right? He's arresting people, but not telling them what he's arresting them for and just letting them sit in jail until they pay up. The barons do not like this, and they rebel and force King John to sign something called the Magna Carta, which means Great Charter. Right? So the barons are going to rebel, force King John to sign the Magna Carta, meaning Great Charter. And basically in this charter, King John promises not to do this anymore. Right? He says, I'm not going to violate the rights of the barons. And there's a whole bunch of other people whose rights are supposed to be respected. Right? There's even a section protecting serfs to a certain extent in the Magna Carta, this Great Charter. So King John promises not to do that anymore. So why is this significant, right? Why is this significant? There's a copy of the Magna Carta right there. Well, it recognizes that free people have rights. Like I said, the serfs are given some rights, but for the most part, political rights are reserved for free people. So I want to stress, we're not talking about modern ideas of equality here. We're not talking about modern ideas of rights. You know, for example, in the United States, everyone has the same rights effectively, or is supposed to legally. But here, even according to law, not everyone's equal, not everyone has the same rights. But free people do have some rights that I think are pretty important. For example, you have to have a good reason for arresting someone, according to the Magna Carta, and you have to give a speedy trial. In addition, the Magna Carta includes trial by jury. So you can kind of see this. This is in our Constitution. You've got to actually formally charge someone to arrest someone. The police can't just come in and arrest you for no reason, right? They have to have a reason. So you have to have a good reason for arresting someone, and you can't just let them sit in jail. They have a right to a speedy trial, something in our Bill of Rights. And the United States comes out of the English tradition of law. We're drawing that from that tradition. So it's unequal, but it does recognize some important rights, and rights not just for the barons, but for any free person. This would exclude serfs to a certain extent. And it's understood that the king is bound by law to respect these rights. So the king is not above the law. The king cannot do whatever he wants. The king cannot change the law at will. The king has to respect these rights. And one thing I think is also particularly interesting is in the Magna Carta, you have this idea that if the king wants taxes outside of what the king had traditionally had the rights to collect, so the king had customarily been allowed to collect certain taxes. Now you have this rule that the king wants to raise more money, he has to consult with the nobles. So if the king wants to add an additional tax, he has to get the nobles' permission to raise that tax. That's the beginnings of Parliament, and also kind of the idea of the beginning of no taxation without representation. Now it's just among the nobles, but it's going to expand. And this will be continually reaffirmed in English law. Now, it's narrow at this point, but it's going to expand later, right? At this point, right now it's just mostly for nobles and some free people. Serfs get a little bit. But over time, it will cover more and more people and become increasingly equal. And you can see here then the laying of the foundations of constitutional monarchy and democracy. We're not there yet. Not everyone's equal. Women are oftentimes excluded from this. There's unfree people, or people who aren't completely free. But like I said, over time, these principles of the rule of law, of people having rights, will be expanded. And this is going to unleash the energy of people, especially in Western Europe. If you have political rights, and as we saw previously, if you're rewarded economically, if you have certain freedoms, you're going to be more likely to innovate, to go out and explore, to go out and try and do great things. Because you'll be protected from the government trying to just steal your stuff, basically. So we can see here that these freedoms, political and economic, are going to help lay the basis for future European power, and also for Europeans to be able to go out and explore and rejoin the worlds, the old world and the new.